Welcome to the Epic Melon Podcast, conversations with the real humans behind broadband networks, cybersecurity, and the future of communications. Brought to you by QA Cafe. In this episode, I talk with my longtime friend Carla Lauter about the state of tech media, the education gap, and how connectivity is fueling amazing new technologies in our most critical industries. All right. Hi, everyone. Jason Walls here from the Epic Melon Podcast again. If you're not tired of hearing my voice yet, then I'm glad, because it means you've made it to episode 10. I think this is 10, which is pretty good. I actually recently had somebody tell me they were super excited, like they didn't know. And they were like, oh man, I'm going to listen to the entire thing on my way to Vermont. And I'm like, I don't know that you should do that all in one sitting. All right. I have with me Carla Lauter, who is a very good friend of mine for a number of years. We went to college together. And I brought her on because it's in the spirit of Epic Melon that we have people who end up in tech that never intended to end up in tech. And you're like one of the case studies.
Yep. That's an apt description for sure.
Right. So Carla's with a company called Diversified Communications, doing basically technical media content, right, for a publication called GeoWeek. And there is actually a lot of networking stuff that we can talk about in relation to what it is that she's writing about and doing there. And anyway, it all relates together. I know whole story. I'm not going to spoil it for you before I get started. Epic Melon is brought to you by QA Cafe, and such the opinions expressed by myself or by Carla do not represent those of QA Cafe or its ownership, and I assume it goes the same with Diversified Communications. This is us. And because we are fully funded by QA Cafe, I like to talk about our three main products. Those are CD Router, CloudShark, and Passport. The CD Router is the industry standard test solution for broadband gateways, Wi-Fi routers, and other customer premises equipment. CD Router contains thousands of fully automated test cases designed by networking experts, covering feature validation, stability, certification, and performance all in one. Moreover, QA Cafe's world-class support team, who's sitting right out there in the office right in front of me, acts as an extension of your own, helping you understand the technologies and build better products overall. Secondly, CloudShark is the way to make network packet captures an easy and useful part of your cybersecurity workflow. CloudShark helps you work on tough issues together without passing around large trace files, losing data, or risking security leaks of valuable information, and helps entry-level analysts learn from your senior experts, curate best practices, and standardize operating procedures around packet captures. Lastly, QA Cafe's Passport is a fully automated solution for testing the connectivity and interoperability of IoT and smart home devices. Testing with Passport is as simple as connecting your device, selecting tests, and getting clear pass-fail results with full log data and packet captures to find and resolve bugs before they end up as a bad review of your product. To learn more about CD Router, CloudShark, and Passport, visit us at www.qacafe.com. All right. So I hate always going back to the beginning. I feel like because the people I have on the show are people I've known for a very long time. But go ahead and let's start at the end, right? So talk about what you're doing now, and we'll get to the fact that it's weird that you got.
Yeah. So right now, my title, I'm the content manager for GeoWeek. So it's GeoWeek. Actually, Diversified Communications is a publication, but also a trade show and events company. So we run essentially trade shows about a crazy variety of industries, some of which are tech, but some of which are things like running or kosher food or kind of everything in between. But my current role is essentially I am directing the content that's on our news site, which is ongoing. We post something new every day, kind of keeping up with the industries that are also part of this event that we run once a year. And I also choose the speakers and put together the conference program for the GeoWeek conference itself, which is happening in February in Denver, Colorado. So
cool.
I encourage you to check that out if you're in the geospatial tech area at all. I can talk a little bit more about the show later, but it's a pretty cool event. It's in Denver every year, and we're getting ready.
Right.
I've just been going through all the submissions. There's so much great work going on, so many awesome projects. And it's really been fun to learn a lot more about the kind of the geospatial side of tech and where it's going, and kind of what's ahead on the
Right.
horizon.
And the majority of the stuff that I've seen you doing is it's about mapping, right? And some of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
very,
A lot of it is
very, very
mapping.
powerful tools that exist now.
Yeah, exactly. So, GeoWeek actually came together from several shows that used to be individual. One was very, very focused on lidar, which is using light lasers to map very specifically to incredible accuracy, get a 3D picture like by scanning lasers. The second was just about 3D tech in general, and then the third was about architecture, engineering, and construction tech.
Mhm.
So basically, how they're modeling for huge AEC projects. And so eventually they all came under the one umbrella because you can't do these huge projects without a sense of place. So there's a lot of intersections between basically the digital and the built world, the built world and the natural world.
Yeah.
In terms of, it's like you can't build a building in a white void like you're standing in the Matrix, right?
Right.
You have to put it in context. So all of those kind of interrelated technologies and their spin-offs and things that are influencing them from either sides are kind of what we cover in a nutshell.
Cool, cool. And so a lot of that data right now is being used. It's being used for those purposes. But
Mm.
correct me if I'm wrong. I got sort of the impression that some of it is well, I guess live is the right answer, right? So
Yeah.
like going out and having like, what was it? It's like drones that are actively scanning stuff and feeding that
Yeah.
information back to
Yeah.
somebody that's actually interacting with it in real time, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a relatively new feature because usually getting that type of data usually took a ton of processing, a ton of data work, cleanup, getting rid of noise and all this other
Hmm.
stuff. So it used to be you go out for 3 days, you did the scan of your site, and you come back, you'd analyze it for a week, and then you turn over, the 3D model after
Right,
that.
right.
And there's a lot of steps in there that people have innovated to make shorter or better, or assisted with other tech, but there is definitely a new emerging market for real-time insights, especially when it comes to things like disasters or
Oh
inspections.
yeah.
Like
Okay.
being able to spit out a report that says there's a probability that there's X number of people trapped in this building after a
Hmm.
hurricane, that type of stuff. The applications are crazy, and I love seeing what people are doing, building on the tech that
Right.
exists and going, oh well, what can we do with it?
Well, so that's what's so
That's
cool,
amazing
right?
to me.
Is
I love
like
that.
there are,
Yeah.
and this keeps coming up. And so when I talk about, because I end up dealing with the smart home world, which is like a little
Yeah.
teeny sliver of what is possible, right? Right. It's like
Right.
the bigger, if you want to talk about the Internet of Things, the bigger concept
Yeah.
of IoT is very much more
Yeah.
on the side of bigger picture ideas that have to do
Right.
with huge industry problems and stuff.
Yes. Infrastructure,
Y-
smart
Right.
cities, all of that.
And
Yeah.
so uh, for me, it always comes back to, and I wrote about this like 12 years ago, right? Because people were like, I was always get annoyed when people, and this is great because this is going to segue to what I want to talk about tech media, right?
Yeah.
It gets annoyed at me when people make up words, right? Or
You
I get
too?
annoyed when
Yeah.
people make up
Me
words, right?
too.
And so
Yeah.
it was way back in the day when people were overusing the term broadband when we didn't really know what it
Mm.
meant, right? And I was like, okay,
Right.
it's a move. It's like the real way to talk about this is a moving target, right? It is whatever is ubiquitous and whatever is fast enough to deliver the applications that are possible at the moment, right? Because
Right.
what you would do
Right.
is you would have not operators, you would have tech media come along and be like, oh, well, blah, 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 speed is faster than blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, at some point right now in 2003, we
Yeah.
don't need that much. And so the
Yeah.
definition of broadband is a different definition than what it is now. Now
Right.
we're getting this situation where you have applications like the ones that you're writing about, where it's like,
Yeah.
it does need to be everywhere.
You do need.
And it
Yes.
is getting faster and more reliable because latency is a huge problem, right?
Yep.
And because that exists, it allows those things to finally be possible, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. We have a very similar thing in our side of the term digital twin, because that's the
Oh yeah.
idea of basically making a 3D model of whatever you have. But it's that definition has also evolved in the back then all you could do is you made a CAD model of your building. Okay, cool. That's not really a digital twin, but people started calling that a digital twin. as it's a digital copy of what's reality. But now it's evolved to being, no, a digital twin is actually when you also are feeding other information in. So like I can click on a wall and look at the flow rate of the pipe that's in the middle of the wall, or I can get insights on a construction site about how many inches off your builder put that
It's just
wall from where it was supposed to be on the
that would
plan.
be super
So like,
useful.
oh yeah,
Sure,
they have
remember
heat maps for that whole thing. They come,
when
like
Lincoln
a
was building his house, he had to show up every single day to make sure they were doing it right. Yeah.
oh my God, Lincoln would have loved this, to just have like literally a LiDAR scanner. It literally, a couple minutes does that, and then you can compare it and just do a heat map of like where it was supposed to be on the BIM model versus where it is in real life, and go, hey guys, floor's not level. You wanna do that over
It
again?
comes over the
Um,
loudspeaker like Big Brother.
yeah. But there's, but those definitions have evolved as the tech's evolved. Like we weren't able to do real time stuff with digital twins until, very recently. With, a lot of that, it has to do with stuff being served in the cloud, stuff being accessible via faster networks too, because there's no point in being able to open up to create this huge model if you can't open it up in the field because you're working on the slowest internet possible. Like you're not going to want to render a giant building,
No,
right?
right.
So it's there's a lot of things that have gone hand in hand to kind of push that evolution forward, and it's interesting to follow. But yeah, we we struggle with the definitions too, because for a while there, everything was a digital twin, and we were all going, no,
Well, it's funny because I first heard
because you
that
made a
term.
digital picture of it isn't a twin, So
I first heard that term the other day, totally
yeah,
unrelated in regards to offering a smart home energy service, right? Where
yeah,
you're
yep,
monitoring how much energy your home uses,
mhm,
right? And
yeah.
the operator I was talking to was like, "Oh yeah, we want to be able to make a digital twin, digital twin." I'm like, "What now?"
Yeah. What? Yeah. Right. Right. And it's essentially, and in that case, in that application, it makes sense because, you could get a whole picture of what's going on in your house, basically not just the symptom of what's happening, but the actual, where's everything flowing. So, okay, so you're using X amount of electricity per month. Where is that coming from? And what is the pattern of you leaving that particular, crappy, watt sucking thing on all day? Like you can kind of see these patterns and actually make actionable decisions off of them, instead of going, oh well, my house drew 500 kilowatts last month.
Right,
Well, what does that tell you? Like, I don't know where that came from. I don't know what's causing that. Is that because I ran my AC more than I should?
right,
It's getting those patterns or actionable insights that can be put together, seen
right,
holistically.
right,
The more parts you have, the more sensors that are giving you that input, the more you can output an actual answer instead of a
right.
guess.
And getting into the point where the mind that is looking at that data is not a person anyway, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Which
Yeah.
I mean, whatever. We can go down the whole route about what the definition of AI is right now, but I'm not going to.
Yeah.
Which is not so. Again, media making up words, like the thing that's also been sort of like, uh, it's like I have a habit of when I have a habit of when I see things starting to get repeated a lot, or when I see a certain pattern, I'm like, wait a minute, right?
Yeah, that little flag, that little sus flag comes up like,
Yeah,
"Wait, what?"
right. So
Like, "What are we all
the
talking
whole
about?"
thing
Right.
with a for those of you listening on the podcast, I'm using
Air quotes.
giant air quotes right now.
Air quotes.
AI, right, is
Yeah.
now everywhere, and everybody's constantly writing about it. But not everybody is talking about the same thing, and the people who
No.
are writing about it don't necessarily know what it is that they're writing about, right?
Yeah.
And the learning language models thing is the biggest thing that annoys me about that,
No,
right?
we just put together last month or the month before a report on basically the intersection of geospatial and AI, like where geospatial companies are actually using AI versus like what all of this stuff in the media is. And there were several people that we interviewed that were like, they had to, like, the first thing out of their mouth was like, I know you've all been hearing about a lot of this on TV, but this is what we're talking about, not this. And a lot of them actually specifically went into the like, okay, we are most of the time using the kind of interpretation, image analysis type of machine learning, not the natural language
Right.
model stuff. Because the natural language model stuff is still in a very, it's a researchy phase. People are interested in it because it would be amazing for some of these industries to be able to have an architect say, how many pounds of concrete do I need to pour for this foundation today, instead of going through some model and like trying to do all this complex calculations. You can get data faster
Right.
if you can ask it in a natural way.
Right.
But that's not how they're using AI.
What?
They're using AI to segment point clouds to tell the difference between a car parked on a street and the street, or a tree versus the tree next to it.
Cool.
There are forestry examples where they basically run a drone through the forest, and then they can count individual trees and calculate how much timber is in them because they have their exact dimensions. So like, but that is all helped with AI that's doing basically image recognition or image learning, that kind of those tools like Meta's segment to anything AI, that type of stuff is being applied from an image perspective. And
Right.
we haven't seen a ton of like drastic change in the AI tech that has been serving that community in the last, I don't know, 5-6
Well, right,
years.
because that's been around for a lot longer,
Right.
right?
It's been around for a lot longer, right? Like if you show, at the beginnings of machine learning is like, let me show you 100 pictures of a wolf and 100 pictures of a husky, and now tell me, is this a husky or a wolf, right? So like that type of image recognition has been ongoing, but what's happened is the AI became a part of the media when all that chat GPT stuff, because we the public got to try
Right.
it,
Right.
right?
Right.
Like because we had no use for a tool that said, okay, that's a husky, not a wolf, right? But can we ask it things like, oh, write a new verse to "We Didn't Start the Fire" by Billy Joel? Oh, that's fun, right? So it's become something
You
that
did see
now
that. I'm glad you saw that.
that now the everyman has an opportunity to understand what the large language models are capable of. They kind of are probably misextracting that capacity to other capacities where AI
No, and it
is.
sucks because I
Yeah,
feel like some media makes it worse. And
yeah,
a lot of times people do that on purpose because it's clickbaity, right?
yeah,
And then
right,
you end
yeah,
up having situations where like, what was it? The chat GPT guys were like dragged before Congress to like talk about
yes,
disinformation. And I'm like,
yeah,
this is what I would do. I would walk in and be like, chat GPT is not a search engine. Bye.
yeah. Bye.
It's not.
Uh,
We never
it
claimed it
reminds
was.
me of
We
when
never said it was
you
going
ever
to be. It has one job and it does that job very well. And it's to tell you what you want to hear.
it reminds me of when they told Congress told Napster to like turn off your server or whatever. And it was like, okay, yep,
Ooh,
we'll go do that. Yep, that because that's totally a thing we can do. No,
we've come a long way since a series of
yeah,
tubes.
right. Oh my god, yeah,
Oh man.
uh,
No, it's anyway,
yeah,
that's my point is it's
yeah,
actually this is great. This is a great segue because I want you to talk about how it is that you got here because
yeah,
it's very cool that what you ended up having to do before you were even doing this
yeah,
was effectively trying to translate
yeah,
technology, science, right, into a way that everybody can understand, but not
yeah.
necessarily the layman either. It's like scientists who are
No,
literally just trying to talk that are bad at it, right?
yes, yeah. So yeah, to go back, so I started. I have an undergraduate degree in marine and freshwater biology, but I get horribly seasick. So that as a
Womp
career,
womp.
being on a boat, being a marine biology student didn't really appeal to me. I got a job at an insurance company because I needed to pay bills, and I ended up writing some user manuals for the software, this terrible proprietary software that we were using to process payments for this insurance company. So I got really used to like, okay, let me project and think about what someone who is a user of this would actually understand or not understand. So I got, really good at that, made this huge manual, and then decided that I can't spend the rest of my life in an insurance company. It just was like
Especially
soul
that
sucking
insurance
and boring.
company.
It was so boring, right? And it was like, okay, out. So I went back to grad school for environmental science and environmental education, and learned, pedagogy and techniques. And I thought I was going to be an exhibit designer. Turns out that's actually not a career. Like you can work in a museum and kind of play with exhibits, but you're not like a full-time exhibit designer. So that made me sad because again, I really love picturing what a visitor to a museum would get out of or understand
Right.
from minimal information conveyed to them, right? Because you don't have time to give them 20 pages of background. You have a demonstration or you have a visual that is trying to get a point across.
Right.
And you have to do that in an efficient way, but you also have to do it in a way that isn't dumbing it down to be wrong. So if you're doing this at a science museum, you can't make it so simple as to give people additional misconceptions about what they came in about,
Right.
which is which is tough, right? So while I was kind of interning at a museum, I got offered a job to work for this for the University of Maine, but it was a grant that was funded by NSF, and it was essentially the point of it was they wanted to be able to take what scientists were actually researching when it came to planetary science. So in my case, this was oceanography based, so things like sea surface temperature, sea surface salinity, things of those nature, and then connect them with what teachers were actually teaching in the classroom.
Ah,
So so teachers have standards. They have things that at the end of the day they have a bullet list that says, your kid must know what 2 plus 2 is, right? But then the scientists are just off in their own little world doing their own little
right.
research. So they were like,
And
so
it's a huge gap, and it's not even just
yeah,
like we're not even talking
yeah,
about like primary
right.
school, right? Like
No, no, no,
we
no, no.
ran into
Like
it in college a lot, like a lot.
a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot. And to be fair, like the scientists are not paid to be educators. The scientists are paid to
Exactly.
be to be scientists.
Yeah.
Like that is what they are getting a grant to do. That is 100% it. But because I was working with NASA scientists and NASA data, part of NASA's mission is, hey, we want the public to use this
Yeah.
data. Like
Yeah.
there was this big imperative to be like, why are we spending all this money if no one is ever using the data that we generate, or because like researchers would use it, but they're like, no, 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 this is for the public. We need the public to understand what's going on in the oceans, what's going on in the skies. But it's not just outer space. It's like, hey, we have Earth science and we live on Earth, so maybe we should actually talk about that. So we did these while I was there. We did these like amazing workshops where we would get the scientists to essentially mind map or concept map out what their science actually was, and then we made them connect it to some higher level topic. So either fisheries or climate change or whatever it was. Their research is down here, but they had to find the concepts that bridged the gap between my little area of science and big, oceanography with a capital O, right? Or something that's going to affect people, weather, algae blooms, all these things. And that exercise allowed the scientists to even think through what they were doing more adequately,
So
which
what's
was really,
crazy about
really
this
fun.
is like
Yeah,
so I've talked about this on some of the previous episodes where it's like
yeah,
what I end up doing at the end of the day, at least in
yeah,
part of my job, is marketing standards,
yeah,
right? And it's
yeah,
exactly that situation because the people, especially in standards, it's like you have the regular engineering geek, and then you have
yes,
like the people who are in standards, and it's
yeah,
like all of
yes,
us eventually have to
yeah,
become marketers, right?
right,
You have
yes,
to at least
right.
think in a way that you
Right,
can.
because you can't just create a standard and then like it's not if you build it they will come. You have to be able to explain it and explain also why it should be adopted and why
Mhm.
people need to know how this works and then educate them on how that
Yeah.
works. So yeah, yeah, absolutely. There's a huge parallel there. And I, in that job for that, I worked there for 10 years. I eventually left the UMaine, but worked for under the same grants with a private, like a spin-off company, like a contractor to NASA. And we did stuff based on, Earth science satellites that measured the saltiness of the ocean from
Yeah.
space.
Yeah.
One that just got launched, which measures sea level, which I'm still following them all because I'm a nerd. This above me, if you can see the video, is my little award for working on the salinity one.
Oh, nice.
I still have it on
Oh,
the
I
wall,
think,
but
it's like children.
yeah, yeah, right. It's like hello. But what it really made me do, again, I have all of these weird little skills that I picked up on all these
Mhm,
weird
mhm,
little jobs,
mhm.
right? Like I do some video editing. I know how to write. I know how to write user technical manuals. I needed to. So when I was looking to move on from this position, I applied to Diversified because they had a position just for an editor, which is like just write about stuff. And I'm like, well, I know how to do that. So why,
Well,
like why
as
did
an
I do
aside,
that?
the thing that we haven't talked
Yeah,
about is that Carla is also
yeah,
runs. It was just a blog, but it became kind of a
yeah,
phenomenon called
yeah.
the Beer Babe, in which
Yes, and that is looking back on that too, it's the same
yep.
thing. It's explaining complex stuff to people in a way that makes them want to care about it. So, explaining the brewing process or what these styles are, or what the heck any of this means, or, just it's that same vein of stuff. So, I started as an editor, just kind of like writing about, what's going on in the industry, but then also just being able to make connections to other fields helped us to bring those couple of individual shows together, because like there is a natural overlap between what architects want to know and the types of data that these other people are
Hmm.
collecting.
Hmm.
There's a connection between surveyors and construction sites. There's a connection between drones and the natural resources, and like there's all of these connections that are just kind of like waiting to be explored a little bit further. And it's become what I'm passionate about. It's really kind of got me there. But like if I used to I used to say, even when I was working as a NASA contractor, I used to be like, if you had told me, 11-year-old me who wanted to be a veterinarian, if I had if I was going to end up working for NASA, translate, basically helping people to understand NASA science, I would have thought you were absolutely
Yeah,
wacko.
right,
Like I would have
right.
been like, no, absolutely not.
Well, no, and it sucks because
And
we tell,
and it,
I don't know. One
yeah.
of the things that always kind of annoys me is when people ask what your 5-year plan is or something like that, right?
Oh
And
yeah, I don't know what my 5-year plan is.
that's,
I
get
yeah, and
out of here.
yeah, I mean, and while I do appreciate, like the job that I'm in now, we do talk about like career development. That's fine, but like that whole like, oh, you get out of high school and they're like, oh, what are you going to do in the next 10 years? I don't know what I'm going to do in the next 10 years. And I think that what's kind of neat for me, there was a quote, and it was from Jack Dangermond, who's the head of Esri. And I'll have to look up the
What's that? What's
precise quote.
Esri?
But it's basically, oh, I'm sorry. Esri is a mapping company. It's actually not Esri. Sorry, it's Charles Trimble, who's in charge of Trimble, which is a laser scanning and surveying company. And he said essentially that when you're looking ahead, right, people will say, oh, well, what's the technology that's gonna like get us there? So like Charles Trimble was one of the people who basically invented the handheld GPS receiver and
Oh,
basically
cool.
non-governmental uses of GPS.
Oh, cool.
So
That's a
so he
great
goes,
analogy,
but
right?
oh my God. But he was basically like, you can't like plot things out ahead of time and say, oh, well, this tech is going to lead to this tech is going to lead to this tech. But what you can do is look backwards, and there's a through line straight through.
Right.
So you just don't know what that through line is going to be. But I think I love that quote, first of all, for the technology, because yes, when we write the history books, it sounds like A led to B, led to C, led to D, right? But but that's not how it worked. Like there were 100 forks that were not taken,
Yeah.
to end up where we were. And that's how that's how I feel about my career,
Yeah.
is that, of course it makes sense now for me to look at me going, okay, science, writing, explaining things. Sure, this is what I love doing since I was a little kid. But like, that was not a trajectory that I even knew was a career when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And that's the same way I feel about tech, is I don't know, what the future tech is we're all aiming at, because we're not all aiming at it. We're aiming at totally different
Right.
things.
Right.
And what that next thing is going to be, whether that's more advanced AI or whatever it is going to be,
Hmm.
more automation, more robotics, whatever the direction is that you're passionate about, doesn't mean that that's going to be A to B to C to D.
No,
It just doesn't work.
it's true, and I find often that people don't. It's not that people don't trust uh organized chaos, right? Or like
Right.
self organization, which is
Yeah.
which is demonstrably how everything in reality actually works, right?
Actually works. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Darwin
but
had
it's
to
tough.
disagree with
Like
there.
it's tough for people to write, and especially, and again, it always comes down to media. It's hard to write about stuff like that, and
Yeah.
right, because people are expecting you to tell a story,
Right.
right? And you're like,
oh, of course.
spoiler, there is no story.
Yeah. Yeah. Spoiler alert.
The internet was
that's
made
not how it
entirely
goes.
by accident.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
It's like we're here now, but well, actually, it's so great because again, it's like it's cool that you're seeing sort of the what's the word? Convergence is the
Yeah.
word.
Convergence
Although
is
I really
definitely the
think of it more like what is it? Incursion, right? From
word. Yeah. I like that. Yeah.
Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of
Yes.
Madness. It's
Yeah.
like another
Yeah.
multiverse is coming into this one,
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
that's really what happens. And so you're in a situation now, which is helped along by networking technology hugely, where, like you were saying,
Mhm.
you have people of different industries who would never ever talk to each other that were probably all affecting each other for a very long time.
Yup.
Now suddenly
Yeah.
talking to each other, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, we talk a lot about getting rid of silos, which was a huge problem, especially for the construction industry, because not only do you have the silos like within the trades, like the plumber doesn't talk to the electrician, but you also had silos between, the surveyor, the site planner, the GC, the everybody,
Yeah.
is that they all had their own role. and their own plans. So they would, one guy would be literally working off of different plans than the other person. And like, I don't know how you build skyscrapers when you're literally building not on the same page. Like it's so but what that resulted in was like, especially for the construction industry, billions of dollars of what they call rework, where they would do it and then be like, oh, these two things hit. Okay, so now we have to take them both down and do it again. The amount of waste and rework
sucks.
Oh yeah, they did a report in 2018 where it was this kind of infamous report where they ranked all these industries about like, kind of how efficient they were. And architecture, engineering, construction was only above agriculture in the amount of like absolute unnecessary extra work that is being done.
Wow.
And everybody in the industry was like, oh crap. So there was this huge push for digitalization at that point, because they were like, oh, well, the solution is just to digitize everything. And it's like, well, you also have to communicate.
Right.
You can't just make it all digital and then again still work on the same plan, work off of different plans that different people have digitized, which is what some of them are doing now.
Right.
But it's like,
that's interesting that it's agriculture was the other one, because that's also the place that is seeing the most benefit from IoT stuff, right?
Yeah, 100%. Right, because agriculture just didn't have any data on anything.
Right.
So they were just like, oh, well, we're just going to do this way. Cool. And when that little patch of the, the field needs some water, we'll just give the whole field water. And it's like, no, though. It's like, that's the dry spot. just so there's drones that now can detect soil moisture, and then they can go, hey, why don't you just water this quarter hectare in the corner, and then save your water resources, and that'll catch up that crop to the rest of the area instead of wasting, they do it with sprayers and all kinds of other stuff too. But like, they call that precision ag, but it sounds precision ag like it's some kind of like, highfalutin whatever. That's the way it should have been in the first place if we had actual information.
I get you. Right. They're trying to spin it positively.
They're like, look how high tech it is.
We're not trying to call it the non-sucky way of doing it.
Yeah, right, exactly. And but there's just I feel like there's a lot of room for innovation there. And I am always happy to see more applications come out of kind of new companies or new startups. Like, I would rather see somebody take a tech and go, oh, I can also do this with this.
Right.
Than to just invent a tech for a problem that doesn't exist, which is also something that I see occasionally too.
So how do you feel like what is the role that tech media plays in that, do you think? Because what I think happens, and we're going to get down to talking about your grandmother's broadband situation, but
oh yeah,
because this get ready for this segue, right?
Yeah.
I feel like, and again, it could be just a feeling, but like when media writes about something that becomes suddenly consumer aware, and not literally consumer aware in the sense that the people who are reading it are actually the consumers of the product. They may not be,
but it's in the context.
But right,
yeah,
how much of a gap is there between what's really going on in industry and what we end up hearing about as laymen, and does that shift at all when we finally hear about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me in my job role, it actually influences some of the stuff that I'm doing for programming. So like, for example, when when that Spot robot from Boston Dynamics first came out and became in the popular media, right? Everybody wanted to know, like, well, can I use it? Like, what can I do with it? Like, it just became this like, oh my God, look, it's a thing that everybody can have. And it's like, well, it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
So I put a session on, the conference that was talking about automation, where it's actually being used and what the status of its capabilities actually is. Because for our audience, they wanted to know actually the practicality of like, am I going to use this? And I've done the same thing with NERFs, which are neural.
They really call them NERFs.
Yes, NERFs. It's like neural radiance something fields, and that is using advanced algorithms to basically make a 3D scene out of 2D pictures very quickly.
Ooh.
So that's cool. If you haven't seen that, there's a lot of activity going on LinkedIn about NERFs right now. But to me, in my role as someone who's trying to connect what's going on with an audience, I would rather be writing about, so where are we at really? Or putting on a session going, let's ask some questions about this, than, look, it's going to solve everybody's problems. Because I think
much of that.
especially when you're in I would say, more of a niche tech media like I am, there is a responsibility for somebody to be writing those articles about, like, okay, you've been hearing a lot about this. What is it? What does it do? And when can I use it? Is this going to be something that is, a year from now, 10 years from now, 25 years from now? What is the outlook here? And that has informed, my programming in a way that
Right.
I didn't think it would, because we're having people bring this up all the time, like, oh, it's Chat GPT. Oh, Chat GPT. I'm like,
It's like,
this has nothing to do with surveying, but
everybody
okay, we
slow
can talk
down.
about it.
I will tell you when it's time to put it into your LinkedIn profile.
Right, exactly. Right, exactly. But I really do feel like, especially, but the other thing that's happening in media is, just in general, all of the consolidation means that everybody is getting bought up and consolidated in medium, whatever. And there are very few publications that have the expertise enough to have those types of discussions. So what you're getting
Right.
is a really surface level, clickbaity, or very, 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 shallow depth of information from a lot of
Right.
sources. And there are very few where you can go even slightly deeper than that. And that worries me across all media, because it's one of those things that you're not really getting the full story. You're getting the local news, 300 word. There's a thing now, did you see that the ice cream shop opened, next door? That's nice. Have a nice summer. Like, it's a little, it worries me, but at the same time, it is informing what I do. So, like, we're trying to do that. As even before I joined this publication, we had all this kind of stuff of, like, what can you do with LiDAR?
Yeah.
How good is it really? What's the accuracy about? Because, accuracy and standards are a big deal now too, because all these manufacturers are claiming different levels of accuracy, because there's nobody standing there going, you need to measure like this, right? So there's multiple efforts to do that now. There's a lot of organizations that are getting in there, but, like, for a couple of years they would say, oh, well, I'm more accurate than that, and they'd be like, yeah, but you did this and not that. So, like, there's a lot of potential there, but I think it's suffering from the fact that there are fewer and fewer, like, tech specific or industry specific publications that can actually get there.
Right.
Because the volume of churn and the click, pay per click and all of that stuff that's really affecting the bigger news media, it's not worth it to them.
Right.
They'd rather do 100 surface thing about, like, oh, Chat GPT helped my kid cheat on their test or whatever.
Chat GPT wrote this article about Chat GPT.
Right. Which I swear to God, some of them have, if you've read them.
Oh yeah.
Like,
Right.
But I, but I don't want to be, kind of high and mighty about it. But I just think, supporting places that do go into those depths or ask those questions is super important, because they might not be around forever. And I think it's unfortunate. It's the unfortunate reality of the media landscape as a whole, that kind of bothers me, is that, even me, when I'm looking for things that are more information about things that I don't understand, I have trouble. I have to go, I have to, and granted, I have a great network of people. I can go to people.
Right.
But not everybody has, thousands and thousands of connections of LinkedIn or people in the industry that they know, that I could go and ask.
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah.
So, like, I'm sourcing information and having trouble.
Right.
I can't imagine,
No, it's true. And it's gotten to the point where, like, I don't, like if I'm doing research on something, like, very often do I just, like, do Google searches to find articles to read about them. Like, that's just
Right.
not the thing anymore, right? It's like I have
No.
to find somebody to actually ask a real question about.
Yeah, to talk about it.
Now, in our industry, and I don't know if you experience this similarly, you're talking about how having particular niches. In some cases in networking, I find that that's almost it almost becomes too bad. Where, like, especially when it comes to, like, people tend to latch on to a particular kind of technology because that's the thing that they are good at and like, right?
Yeah.
Or it's the thing they're spending a lot of money on, right?
Or they spent a lot of money on it, they need to continue to use,
Yeah.
or else.
Oh, yeah. Right. And so you have, like, all this nonsense about, like, oh, is 5G going to replace Wi-Fi and blah, blah, blah. And Wi-Fi people and 5G people are totally different people, right? But we're all working on the same problem, right? And it's like, stop. Like, none of that matters.
Yeah.
Maybe if you're a person that's trying to figure out what it is that you should invest in, sure, right? But, like it, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter to what we're trying to do with networks.
Right, exactly.
I don't know.
Yeah. We have a parallel too, is that, so LiDAR, the scanning with lasers, typically a tripod, like a surveyor person, with a little tripod or whatever, right?
That's very cute.
And and it's actually came with a little action
Is that
figure
Playmobil?
It's actually a girl. Yeah, Leica made him for a conference, and I was like, "That's too
Cool.
cool." I have a little surveyor. But like, so it started as, terrestrial scan. You put it on a tripod. You could do a 3D map with lasers. Cool, very cool. Now there's a new type, last 5 years or so, where you can walk around with it because it simultaneously is making the map, but also tracking where it is. So it basically self-references to align the scan, which is cool. And now with some of the iPhones, they have LiDAR built into them. And they have that built into them because of AR applications, because if you
Oh,
get
right.
depth information about a room, you can make the elephant come out from behind the couch,
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
Pokemon come out from behind a bush. But people have made applications now that can do some of the LiDAR scanning applications with the phone. And everybody's like, oh my God, it's going to replace everything. It's like, first of all, these are totally different uses. Like, you're not going to be doing, the next, Empire State Building with an iPhone. Now, what you can do are things that are quicker turnaround, smaller areas, things like home reno. Great opportunity to not buy a $30,000 laser scanner, but to get an app and some software and
I
be
get
able
you.
to,
Right. Right.
get it. But it's the same thing. It's like, these are different audiences. Like, for that whole, even that question of, will this replace that? No,
Yeah.
like, there are other tools in the toolbox, and some of you may use both of them. The drones are a great example too, because there's is that going to replace traditional aircraft that take images? And it's like, different
Right.
applications. Like, you can fly a drone under a bridge and look if there's any cracks under there. You can't really do that with a plane. So,
Yep.
like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so there's a lot of places where all of that can go. But yeah, just in general, it's also hard because people also have way too much of their own niche. So like, when we're writing about stuff, we also want people to just be aware of what the ecosystem of
Right.
tech is,
Right.
because we might find something across the bend. So we manage newsletters that are loosely grouped by topics. So there's one about 3D, there's one about AEC, and there's one specifically about like LiDAR and mapping. But like, we include things that are a little bit outside of that industry in those, because we want people to be aware of them, because they might go, hey, maybe I can use that for X application. I love that.
Right.
But it is hard, because it's like, you can almost be too niche, but you can almost also be too general at the same time. So it's a hard line to ride overall.
Right. 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 Or to segue into the thing we were talking about with broadband deployments, right? It's like,
Yeah.
and part of it is through people sometimes have sort of an all or nothing attitude,
Yeah.
right? Where it's like, oh, well, this is the way that we have to do it now, and not recognizing the legacy use cases, right? Right.
Right.
With like, right. The story is that Carl's grandma was trying to get turned up on for a broadband service, right? And now
Yeah.
the operator in question relies on the consumer having a smart home, which is not an unusual expectation,
Right.
in order to
Yeah.
even get the service up and running. But of course, she
Yeah.
doesn't have one because she's 92, you said?
Yeah,
Yes.
92. So, so I had to kind of babysit and install, and then do the install, from my phone. And now all the information has to come to me because it's all connected to my stuff. And to me, it was like, okay, I get this, but it kind of bothers me in the same way as QR code menus bother me. Is that, yes, I understand
No, that's
why
a
they exist.
great analogy.
But you need to acknowledge that there is a chunk of the population for which that is not accessible at all.
Yeah.
And and it's just, in general, that assumption made by many young tech entrepreneurs, if I may stereotype slightly,
Uh,
is that everyone is as capable and as connected as they are.
Right.
And and my whole, rant about that. Yes, it was personally inconvenient for me to have to go over there and supervise an installation that should have been very easy. That's fine. I love my grandmother. It's fine. Like, it's all good. But at the same time, there are many reasons why people might not have a smartphone, and there's many technologies for things that are crucial to their lives that are now dependent on that.
Mhm.
So things like accessing healthcare or their banking information or things like that. So I just hope that we can, like, actually just keep in our minds just a little bit that, like, we're not at 100% connectivity. We're not at 100% smartphone adoption. We're never going to be at 100% for multitude reasons. But we're it feels like everybody's that connected, but they're not.
Yeah.
Like,
It's
and
there are some real problems, especially with coverage in ways that you
yeah,
wouldn't expect,
yeah,
right? Like
oh
the
yeah, absolutely.
richest county in the country having like a ton of dead zones,
Terrible internet.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, my mother lives on Long Island, New York, which is millions of people live on Long Island, New York. They're well off. They usually have these bigger houses and whatnot. Long Island has some of the craziest cell phone absolute dead zones that I've ever seen. And I'm like, first of all, this is not, the Galapagos, okay? It's next to New York City,
Right.
next to Connecticut. I don't know if it's NIMBY. I don't know what's actually happening there, but like Long Island, where everyone theoretically has a smartphone, has a, reason to be connected, just huge dead spots. And it's like, like you can't predict it. And then on the other hand, I live in a town of 9,000 people, maybe on a good day,
Mhm.
and some reason I have fiber in my neighborhood now. So like,
That's
and
see,
that was because I mean, so like,
I know
so I
why.
am sitting
It's
here.
because
I know,
it's a good idea and it's the only thing left. Like it's sort of not the only thing left. It's like
yeah,
there was this is great. I don't want to lose track too much of what we were talking about, but this is actually bring
yeah,
things back nicely. Is that
yeah,
um there was a time where whether or not to deploy fiber was a question, and that there were different
mhm,
technologies that serve different purposes that are being used for different ways, like DSL and stuff like that. And now all that's gone out the window because now it is economical enough, and not just economical enough, but also imperative enough to just run fiber everywhere, right?
yep,
That you possibly can.
right,
Now, you will run into the situations because the question I have for for the big industries that are that are going through digitization. I hate that word. Anyway, I,
me too.
I'm sorry. This whole podcast is about dumb buzzwords, and that's one of the ones that digital revolution doesn't mean anything.
Yeah,
It's like it's not 1999. Um,
yeah, we already invented the
yeah.
CD. We're good, so.
uh, that move is going to leave some people in the dust, the ones that don't have that
Mhm,
level of connectivity, because the connectivity is absolutely necessary for this to happen, right? It's like,
yeah,
yes, you can have a bunch of systems that record stuff and a human being picks it up later and brings it to a place where they put it where they put it into a
yeah,
place where it can be accessed, but that's not
yeah,
sustainable, right?
no, right,
So in a similar fashion of, consumers that might not have aren't on the total connected package of the revolution. Are there
yeah,
people in those industries that we kind of have to watch out for to make sure they don't get sort of left behind out of the move to just do this
right,
everywhere for every reason, right?
yep. Yeah. And for and for a lot of the work that's being done in the geospatial and the even in the construction area, that also means connecting the office to on site. So that is something that they were talking about, ooh, 5G, 5G, 5G for like years, because they were like, okay, we really hate doing all of this work and then literally transporting it back to the office so that it can then be looked at for a week and then you can tell us what to do. That's not helpful to us. So that part of that resistance was, I can't communicate in a way that matters to the people in a field who are in an area that either has poor connectivity, or they don't have they don't have internet in a good enough internet to be transmitting, again, these big 3D files and things of that nature. And I don't know if that's been completely solved, but one of the things that kind of gave people a kick in the butt was actually COVID, because they didn't want to go back to the
Yeah.
office to do anything together. So they're like, okay, we have to solve this. So we either have to invest in something that can, that can get us there. And that's where a lot of, at least on the 3D and the geospatial side, that's where a lot of cloud and streaming tech got invested in at that time.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
it's not only just cloud, but it's also ways to deliver those huge models that don't take up that much bandwidth. So it was kind of like fixing the problem from the back end,
Right, right, right.
which is kind of almost like a video game where it only loads what you
I
need
was
at
just gonna
a
ask if
time.
that was an accurate
But it's
analogy. Yeah.
incredible. But it's incredible what you can see. It's not like a video game where it's like, okay, there's one pixel and then there's like nothing behind it.
Right.
It's it's an fascinating, and I honestly don't understand all of it, but the fact that you can bring up and load these models now in limited connectivity as also kind of another way to address that problem in
Right.
reverse. So so maybe we need to just also stop designing things that are so freaking huge for no reason.
Well, that's
Like
actually
maybe there are other ways that we can address this without having to get everybody that fiber line into their house.
right.
I don't know. Yeah.
So that analogy is really great because that is how the video game industry was solving things for a long time. And now it's come full circle where you have,
Yeah.
if you have, I don't want to say Stadia because Google,
Yeah.
whatever. I love them to death. But if you ever go to that website of our RIP Google projects, it's,
Yeah.
or I forget what the other one is. I think the other streaming service, I think, is Amazon doing it. The game, yeah, Amazon. I forget what they call it. They are now relying on the fact that the end user does have a huge bandwidth pipe.
Right.
And they are literally streaming an HD game to you and doing all the graphics processing on giant in the cloud, right? But now we have an entire other industry that has to go back to the original problem, right? So you have a lot of wireless technologies that go very, very long distances, but you can get like 200 bytes, maybe. And so you have to design for that.
Right. You have to design for that. Figure out how to actually, just do that. And it's been kind of interesting to see that unfold too, because we would see our advertisers come through and be like the headline for the banner ad was like, "Stop shipping hard drives," and I'm like, oh my god, we were shipping hard drives.
No joke. It used to be a running gag that it was faster to put hard drives in a station wagon and drive them across the country than it was to send them over the internet. It could still be the case, because the hard drive's still getting bigger.
In some cases, it is still the case, which is just amazing to me. But
anyway, all right, we can talk for another hour if we really wanted to. I appreciate you coming on because I feel like this was a good change of pace. Because I tend, obviously most of the people that I know are in a very specific aspect of networking, but I wanted to sort of give people a view of the larger tech world in general, in terms of how, the story of the show and how none of us are here on purpose. And that, and that other industries are really sort of suffer the same problem. Oh, actually, there was a really, really quick, aside that I wanted to make that I wanted to ask you. I got this impression from having failed to arrive at many places because of flights, that, at least the airline industry, and now I'm seeing it in almost other industries because I've heard stories from other networking people that we have sort of a trough problem where it's like we have the experts that you were, like you're saying, the people that we need to be able to write about this stuff. We have no one in the middle, and we have a bunch of super green people. Is that the same? Like pretty much everywhere? Like
It is, and it's in the geospatial community as well. They're worried about the fact that like the people who were here in the pioneer days of this are all retiring now. And then they have like baby surveyors, and there's nobody like in that middle ground.
Isn't that weird? I mean, is there actually a baby trough that
like I don't know if that's because of some kind of history and lack of investment in STEM education or something for a period of time, and then we went, oh crap, like, because I think that that some of it is a result. It's too long of a lag time for us to have realized it was happening at the time.
Right.
And now we're reaping the consequences of basically not training up a workforce in a more scientific or technical way. And now it's almost too late to fix what we need now. We can kind of fix, okay, let's go back and look at what we're going to teach the next generation a little bit, but it's in a weird place for a lot of industries. And I think that there's a lot of also young talent that is going to brand new tech. But there is also tech that is there the whole time, like how to build a building, how to make a map, how to build a road, how to maintain infrastructure. That's not new. It's not sexy. It needs to be done or the bridge falls down. So like we need, but I also think there's been, and this is a personal opinion. So I also think there was for a while a really negative opinion towards people who are in the trades. And I think, that perception of like, oh, well, don't grow up to be a garbage man. You have to go to college. You have to, have this higher level of thing.
Carla, we could have an entire show about this. We've been running into that with our kids, right? Where it's like,
but also like, But the thing is that the trades aren't just, garbage man, janitor. They're also the people who are physically building the buildings, maintaining the infrastructure. And these are technical,
Oh yeah.
complex, intellectual jobs. And people don't have a very good sense of what it is like to live those jobs, day in, day out. What are people doing? What is this industry like? So part of the other pieces that we do are things about the job pipeline,
Oh,
because
cool.
we want people to understand what it's like to be a surveyor in 2023, or someone who works on construction projects. There's a great YouTube channel called it looks like BIM, but it's B1M. BIM is building information model, and B1M is the company that this guy works for. And his whole mission in life is like, I want to show you what it's like to actually work on construction, like now that it's all technical and cool and amazing and all these giant projects, because that's just not something that was, there was like a whole attitude of a generation of like, well, you don't want to end up, digging dirt. You don't want to end up, and it's like, yeah, but they're not doing that. They're doing the coolest things I've ever seen.
Right.
So we go to this conference every year called the Year in Infrastructure, where it's put on by a software company called Bentley Systems. They do a lot of crazy infrastructure 3D modeling, like, highway interchanges and entire train systems and things like that. And they just showcase the coolest projects that year, and they are fantastic. They are amazing. They are, dam inspections from drones. They are, Singapore mapped its entire roads and of the entire nation in a year.
Wow.
Like, crazy, amazing stuff. And it's like, but I just don't think also that there's a connection between what's actually going on in construction and what the public's perception of those types of jobs are. And I don't know how to, that's not a quick fix either.
No, it's not a quick fix. But it's like you said, you have to lay the seeds down.
In the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not just the seeds among, not just the seeds among the target, but also among people like you and I who are trying to write about things and translate them to we're trying to make boring stuff sexy, like.
Yeah, right. And I personally find it all fascinating. Yeah. So like it's it's pretty freaking cool. And I think that's an ongoing thing with a lot of tech careers.
Yeah.
I think if you ask that of people in a lot of different industries, they're going to have very similar answers. Is that like, I just don't think there's enough exposure either of just what people are doing from day to day. Like, we don't see it. It's a lot of tech is behind the scenes of what happens or how things get done. It's the, Wizard of Oz, man behind the curtain, and then amazing things happen. But that behind the curtain process is pretty amazing.
No, it's true.
And, and it's a career that is worthy of, anybody's time or smartness. And you don't have to, you don't have to be, a physical guy or whatever to work, in these jobs. You can do these amazing projects digitally and just on the ground and using new tech and running robots around. Cool. And like, it's just,
see, that's cool.
So yeah,
I want to do that right now.
It's so cool. Right. So become a surveyor, everyone. But that's the other thing is that, like, again, with the lack of some of these trade publications, there's less media about the non-emergent crazy stuff going on.
Yeah.
Right. Like, this is typical, like what it's like to be in these jobs. That doesn't sell as many clicks or whatever as, is this thing going to steal my job? Like that, like they're opposing forces.
Yeah.
And I hate that there's not enough room for that in the current, kind of pay models that we have in a lot of the media.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I don't know what the answer is either. Other than, having companies who have a vested interest in these things, especially even the pipeline, right? Even the employee pipeline. That's marketing. Like you need to do that too.
100%. Right? We've talked to several, mapping and surveying firms that partner with local schools and things like that to like get kids to do stuff hands-on and get, that kind of exposure, because they need the people coming up. They're like, I would like to talk to you, high schooler, because in 5 years I need you.
Yeah.
And that type of work, is hard to do en masse, but it is something that's becoming necessary, and people are doing themselves because they have to. But yeah, it's definitely, I think that's widespread. I think you're going to hear that from a lot of different industries, but yeah, it's cool stuff though, man. Like, get involved. It's so cool.
Alrighty.
Like, yeah.
Well, thank you very much for coming on. And all of the reasons that I said previously before I remembered that last point that I wanted to make.
Yes.
Yeah. So usual YouTube stuff. If you really like this, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, because that helps us do this even more and get more cool stuff. Is there any plugs? Any things you want to plug?
Yeah, I just wanted to real quick. I work on Geo Week, which is February 11th through 13th at the Colorado Convention Center. We do have pretty inexpensive passes if you just want to come for the day. You don't have to, kind of do the full conference pass if you don't want to, but check it out at geo-week.com. And then I also work a little bit on our sister show, which is the Commercial UAV Expo. That's coming up in September in Las Vegas. And that one
Really?
is basically all of the applications for UAVs in the commercial space, so the non-consumer level space, but non-military. So it's
Cool.
basically agriculture, architecture,
All
construction,
right. All right.
mining, rescue, police safety, blah, 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 blah. We got like 10 industries. And it's really awesome because they have like outdoor flying demos. You can actually see these in action. I will be on site for that one.
Cool.
But that's at expouav.com if you want to check that out too.
All
But
right.
they're very cool shows, and they're open to anybody.
Yeah,
So,
and it's I encourage people to check stuff like that out, especially in for my networking friends out there. Like, this is the stuff
we have
that is now
student discounts
possible
too. Yeah.
because of what
Yep.
we're doing.
Oh yeah, right, exactly. And if you're in college or whatnot too, we also have student discounts if you want to come and
Oh,
check
sweet,
things out too.
sweet, cool.
Yeah, yeah, happy to have you.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And I
Yeah,
will
thank
close
you.
things as
Thanks
always
for having
do.
me.
And actually, I think that my line is especially appropriate. But own the nerdy things you love and have fun
Yes,
doing them.
absolutely love it.
Bye, dear.